Story by Stripey Giraffe. The Self-Driving Dream. This occurred several years ago when I was still married to my ex-husband. It is one of those stories that seems rather insignificant until it climaxes. It was around Christmas time, and his work was having a Christmas party. We had made a simple plan before he left, that rather than me waiting for him to finish and then asking when he would be back, he would call me when he was ready to go, and I would come pick him up. It was a very simple plan indeed. I stayed home that night and eventually fell asleep. I have no idea what time it was, other than the fact that I was sleeping soundly and not on the couch. I awoke when my phone rang. That is at least what I believed had happened. It was him, telling me that he was ready. So I jumped out of bed, threw on some clothes on the way out, grabbed my keys, and went to where the party was being held. Oddly, I wasn't groggy in any way, and I simply believed that I had fallen asleep and my husband had called me, as planned. When I got there, I saw him, and he was surprised to see me. Not cartoonishly shocked, but surprised. I thought nothing of it, and assumed that it was simply because it had been our plan for him to call me, and for me to come pick him up, and I suppose that was the reason, until something strange happened the next day. Somehow the conversation drifted towards the pickup, and he began telling me how strange it had been that I had arrived just as he was about to call me. I stopped him there. "What do you mean? You called me." "No, I didn't," he replied, looking genuinely confused. I thought maybe that he was being facetious at first, but I soon found out that he was telling the truth. There was no missed call, there was no call at all, and according to him, he hadn't called me at all that night. He told me that he had gotten dressed to leave, gotten ready to call me, and before he had even done so, I had walked in the door. The reason he had been so surprised was because he didn't understand how I had known to be there at that exact moment, since again he never called me. That was the first time that I had ever heard that he hadn't called me, and the only reason I could think of as to how I could have possibly known was that I had simply dreamed that he had. I thought maybe that I had been asleep, and that I had dreamed that he had called me to tell me that he was ready to go, and that I had gotten up and gone to where the party was, only to find that it had all been a dream. But how does a dream tell me this? I've never had weird prophetic dreams like this before. If I had gotten up at the next convenient moment, I would have had to wait for him to call me, and if I had gotten up 10 minutes later, he would have called me. As it was, I arrived at the precise moment that he was about to call me. There have been times in the past where I have thought that my phone had rung, or that someone was knocking at the door, and when I checked, it was only a dream. In these instances, I would wake up and realize that nothing had happened, and that my mind had simply played tricks on me, until this one. This one came true. That is why I got in the car and drove exactly where I needed to be, guided by forces I have no understanding of, but I'm not scared. Back to the simulation, and back to the concept of a soul. The essence that binds to the meat suit, like I picked up that term from Supernatural, of course, but the physical body we have, is our sentience just patterns of synapses and firing in our brain? Maybe, but I don't personally think that's the full picture, and it would be kind of anticlimactic and kind of also discount the idea of free will. So, putting that to the side, I don't think that's quite real, the full picture. And if that's the case, if we have souls connecting us, but we can't detect them, well, their connection points might branch out and touch other people in our lives that matter. I mean, maybe love and connection and proximity isn't even required, but personally, I think it most likely is. At least it increases the likelihood that you will have information or even just emotional instinct, and it creates a tether to the person you love. Yeah, this is a small event, but you were needed, and he probably induced that emotion, pushed it like a flow of water rushing down a river right into your essence, your soul. It's not a conscious thought. I think the barrier between the subconscious, which is where the soul mostly functions and dances around, into the conscious is where the gap is. It's a Grand Canyon, and not much gets through. So that's where the breakdown is. But yeah, I do believe we can connect with each other in ways that we can't scientifically detect within the simulation. Welcome, I'm Paul. This little fella is Dave. Oh. He's kind of stable up there. I kind of prefer having him on my head because he doesn't fall as easily. Oddly, I can balance well. Like, I can move my head a bit and it's fine. But when he's on my shoulder, you gotta lift your shoulder up a bit and it's just a bit more awkward. He was snuggled in the hoodie before, but now I'm wearing this hybrid turtleneck thing that I could... Whoop, now he fell off. Anyways, back to the actual subject matter. I have 8 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you today. From dreams to music, we got it all. Let's get to it. Story by Sherpa Durpa. We pulled the bath panel off for this. 12 jars of homemade piccalilli were made by my wife. First time, just to try something out. They get made, they all get stored in a box in a built-in pantry. Just a small cupboard really with some shelving, about 3 feet wide and around 18 inches deep. Some months later, I got 1 jar out of the box to try one. Delicious, as good as, if not better than shop bought. The jar goes in and out of the fridge until it's polished off. Some weeks later, I go to get another jar out of the pantry, but they're not there. I ask the missus where she put me. Says she hasn't moved me, they're all still in the pantry. 11 jars have vanished with the box they're in. We lived in a 3-bed bungalow, not a big place. We both hunt for them, emptying out the kitchen cupboards and drawers. I even pulled the kitchen plinths off just in case. We start looking in daft places for them, 'cause you never know. I looked in the cupboard under the bathroom sink. I even pulled the bath panel off. So, about 3 years later, we sold up and moved out, totally clearing the place out. Loft, 2 garden sheds, a greenhouse, the garage, alternatively known as the dumping room. Every nook and cranny, never saw again. Story by TJ Speed, My Lazy Hallway. This is one of those stories that is almost hard to tell, because you know everyone is going to think you're crazy. I understand that, because if someone else told me this happened to them, my first reaction would be to say, "Oh, you thought the light was on." I don't think that's what happened at all. I was staying with my brother, although he wasn't home that night. It was just an average night. I had nothing weird happen before this, and I certainly wasn't trying to scare myself. I was laying in bed, almost ready to go to sleep. My bedroom door was closed, but I could see the hallway light shining under the threshold. There was also that little bit of light around the edges of the door that comes from having a bright hallway light on while your room is dark. The door has an aura. I looked over at it and thought to myself, damn it, I have to get up and turn it off. It wasn't a scary thought, just one of those little, I can't believe I have to do this, annoying self-quips. So I pulled the sheets off myself and started to get up. As I stood, I noticed the light go out. Not get dimmer or anything, just suddenly off. I paused for a second because it was unexpected, but it didn't make sense because I had just been staring at it for the last few seconds. I walked over to the door and opened it, and the hallway was dark. I paused for another second because since I was staying with my brother, I had the small possibility in my head that he had snuck in while I was asleep and turned it off, only he wasn't home that night. The house was otherwise empty, save me. The next thing I did was walk over to the hallway light switch and flipped it off to test it. It turned out fine. I turned it back on and stood there, contemplating. If it was a normal circuit breaker issue, I would have expected something weird when I went to test it, but there wasn't anything wrong. The breaker wasn't tripped, the bulb wasn't burned out. The switch didn't do anything weird when I used it. It was all normal. On and off like a kid teasing his sister with the lights after she watched Ring. People always say the most obvious answer is the right one, and in this case, I can't really argue with that. I know what I saw. The problem is, I wasn't dreaming or half asleep when this happened. I was almost fully awake, laying in bed staring at the light shining under my door, debating whether or not I wanted to get up to turn it off because who wants to get out of bed after they're all tucked in and warm? Even a few feet is torture. I would put a large sum of money on the fact that that hallway light was on, and then, before I got to the door, it wasn't. Sounds trivial, but it's not to me. Story by D1 Jedi Tech. The Concrete Jumpscare. I grew up living in the northeast part of Oklahoma, on the edge of some old mining districts. If you have never been anywhere like that before, imagine a landscape littered with huge chat piles, gravel hills basically, from mining operations, odd concrete pillars jutting out here and there, and old concrete slab foundations where machinery had been mounted years ago. The land was littered with old industrial remnants when I was exploring as a kid. You see, I used to explore those old mines when I was younger. There was this one place in particular that I used to visit all the time, maybe 100 yards or so from my house. I was not some kind of rare visitor to this place either, since I would go there every now and then, and on each occasion I would take roughly the same route. After going there so many times, it became second nature to know precisely where I was without looking. Because I became so accustomed to the landmarks, I could walk around blindfolded. I knew where the brush started to get a little thicker or where the ground sloped gently down, even the places where old concrete slabs or pillars jutted out. One day, I was walking on my usual trek to this place of mine when I came across something funny. In front of me loomed a huge concrete foundation measuring maybe 6 feet by 6 feet by 3 feet. About half of it was buried in the dirt. This thing was humongous. It would have been truly impossible to miss if I had passed by this thing on the way to this place. My first thought was that I must have gotten turned around somehow, but that didn't make any sense. I knew precisely where I was, since I could see all the landmarks that I was so familiar with. So, I walked up to this concrete slab, examining it from all angles. Curiosity killed the cat, but hopefully not me. It looked pretty plain and old. If someone had asked me how long it had been there, I would have guessed a good few years, maybe even decades, due to how worn out it appeared. I was thinking, how have I never seen this before? The more I stared at this concrete slab, the more it baffled me. It was not hidden behind any dense foliage or anything like that. It was on my regularly traversed route to this old mining district. There was no way that I could not have seen it before. I even began to think about retracing my steps on that route in my mind, just to see if maybe I had always passed by this thing, but just never paid any attention to it. A thought that unsettled me. That possibility was even less plausible in my mind, considering how much I would notice on that trip. A concrete slab as big as that would be one of the most notable things on that route. In fact, it should have been one of the landmarks that I would use to navigate around that area, since it was as tall as 3 feet. A mole on Mother Nature's cheek. Eventually I went home, but I spent a good long while brooding over this phenomenon. It's really not that strange to find an old concrete slab in those parts. There were quite a few of those kinds of industrial remains littered over those fields. However, there was just something about stumbling onto something as big as that in a place that I knew so well that just seemed odd, and it makes you deeply question your own brain. It has been a long time since then, and up to this day I still cannot shake the feeling that somewhere in that landscape there lies a concrete slab that I am sure was not there before. But as I think back on my reminiscences of those explorations through old mining districts, that concrete slab is forever etched into my memory. So are the other excursions that I took, where I am positive that there was no great mysterious concrete slab waiting to baffle me. So my mind is only very occasionally faulty. So I do believe it's probably the multiverse, shenanigans, quantum immortality, different universe, maybe different site. If it's still there, you probably switch universes. Or maybe it is just a really large DOP. Been wondering that for quite a while. Just how large can an object de-render and then reappear or appear somewhere else, or even traverse the universe? The idea also extends to what form does the matter have to be? Can air, atmosphere, DOP? Can water, fluids? Water, perhaps. We have quite a few stories of water seemingly appearing in a person's bedroom or in the living room, crashing down into the person's head, but there's no leak above or stuff like that. So water seems like, yeah, probably not gas. I don't know how confined, because gas is so spread out. Water is still somewhat bound together at the molecular level. Okay, so that's all well and good, but yeah, what about large, physical, solid objects? How big can they be? I mean, this is still a pretty big concrete pillar. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's the limit? A house? A mountain? The entire planet? For one thing, I do believe that for an object to de-render requires no player to be observing it. It's not that observation directly affects the object in the way you might think, but it's just our perception if the server is rendered in a way to save resources. When we're not looking, no one's looking, it's not rendered in the memory of the game because it saves space and processing cycles. If it is, everything's rendered. I mean, matter is so complicated the deeper down you go. Yeah, you're going to save a lot of resources if you don't have to compute that whole thing. Simply save the state, the information, and then you can recreate where it should be and its state that it should be in when you come back to it. Now, I don't think this applies for anything bound with a soul, infused with a soul, like us. Human beings, maybe animals too. That's an interesting question too. Do animals have souls? What is the size limit on DOP and reappearance? I don't know, but my gut is there isn't necessarily a size limit. It's more down to if it's being observed or interacted with in any way. Story by Not So Fancy Gecko. A musical skip. I've had those moments in my life where I walked into a room and had no idea why I was there, or swore that I had seen a movie before only to find out I had seen a different one. Everyone has had these moments, yeah? Tell me if this fits. I was about 12 during English class. I can't recall the lesson as well as the room. There was a desk. We were all talking until the teacher got our attention and we were all settled down for the lesson. The lesson wasn't anything special. We were listening to a song in English class. You listen to the song, fill in the blanks to the song, and then go over the worksheet to see who had the correct answers. I remember getting some of the answers right and some wrong. No big deal. At the end of the lesson, we went over the worksheet. Someone would announce an answer, and if it was wrong, the teacher would say so and explain the correct answer to the class. I remember it well, because I remember what answers I got wrong. A week later, or whenever the next English class was, we all sat down. The teacher then passed out the worksheet. I thought, oh, we're doing this again. I did not think, this is similar, or this is familiar, but we were doing this again. Same worksheet and the same song. I could recognize this lesson anywhere. Maybe it was a repeat lesson because the teacher had gotten the wrong worksheet, or the other class needed to do it. So I started filling in the blanks. I actually did better on the worksheet this time around, because I remembered the corrections from the other class. No, not the lyrics, because I didn't really listen to the song outside of class, but I remembered the teacher doing the corrections on the worksheet the first time around. As we worked on the worksheet, funny to say, it became increasingly apparent that this wasn't merely a similar worksheet to the one we had in the other class. Nope. This was the exact same worksheet that I had done a week ago. I eventually brought this up at some point in time. I don't actually remember if I told the teacher first or one of my peers that had sat down with me. Either way, I remember saying that we had done this worksheet before. No one seemed to agree with me, though. The teacher didn't say, yes, this is a repeat lesson. She acted like it was the first time we had ever done it. Even my friends seemed to give me those looks. I remember trying to explain to them what I meant with intensity. No, we had done this worksheet before. We had listened to this song. You corrected us on our answers last class. They didn't seem to understand. No one did. It's a strange mix, like oil and water, when you feel both fury and fear at the same moment. Competing forces. I was the only one who realized this entire class happened before, and worst of all, this meant I could be crazy, and I was only 12. I don't think I went down this path back then, though, just fear and fury. I didn't try to lie or joke around. Eventually, I just gave up talking about it because no one seemed to understand. So I went over the worksheet. I had more correct answers this time around because I actually remembered the teacher correcting everyone on their incorrect answers, but not all of them, Still, it's more evidence that it wasn't all in my head. I do question myself now as an adult, if I should have tried to force the issue more. How would the teacher have reacted to that? Throw me detention, I expect. Who'd believe me that I had a vision, actually duplicated an entire classroom period? No, I was right to keep it inside after my brief outburst. The world isn't ready for my superpowers that I can never use again. That's the story, pretty much in its entirety. It was just a bizarre day.
What would you choose if you had the option to pick a date that'll reset at least a few times? You don't want to be trapped in there forever like Sam and Dean, especially something as traumatic as that. What would you pick? Obviously, for me, I would pick something like, just having a 10,000 calorie cheat day or something like that. Just vary up the food, everyday reset, so can't get fat. Just eat endless, copious, biblical gluttony levels of pie and cake and donuts and burgers, tacos, pizza, no cheese, of course, because cheese is awful. Yeah. What would you choose? I mean, maybe I would even rob a bank just for the thrill of it. Because again, not hurting anybody, but just it'll reset. So what's the big deal? Just see what it's like. How hard is this actually? Probably pretty hard. Oh, Dave is not aboard with that. Dave does not approve of thievery, or burglary, I guess. Story by Lazy Day SJJ. 2 cups and a virus.
Around the time when I had COVID, my brain wasn't working properly. The doctors called it brain fog. It was really foggy because I forgot things. I would sometimes lose my train of thought. I blamed COVID, but I'm not sure to this day if that's the real reason. A couple of weeks before my sickness, I went to a hockey game. My favorite team had a promotion going on that whoever got there first would be given souvenir tumblers with the team logo on them. I ended up getting 2. They came in a package of 2, so no choice there. When I got home, I took both of the tumblers out of the packaging. As expected, I washed both of them before placing them in the cabinet. Since then, I've mostly used just one of the tumblers. It had the logo on the side. It wasn't painted on either, so it had a frosted look to it. It also had a tactile feeling when you rubbed your fingers over it, which I liked a lot. One day I decided to take the other one. I opened the cabinet where my tumblers were kept, reached in, and grabbed the unsuspecting tumbler by the top, only to find that it had no logo on it whatsoever. It's just plain black. I was dumbfounded because that just wasn't possible. I kept turning it over to see if the logo was on the other side, like I was trying to solve a Rubik's Cube. I examined it to see if maybe the logo had faded, but that just wasn't possible. It couldn't have possibly faded because the logo wasn't even painted or anything that would fade. It was etched into the side of the tumbler. You wouldn't be able to take such a logo out of a tumbler while washing dishes. That was one of the things that really upset me about this whole thing. If I had only seen the tumblers in the bag at the hockey rink, I would have been totally fine with it. It's not like my memory was perfect anymore. But I didn't just see the 2 tumblers in the bag. I took both of them out of the bag that day. I washed them with my own 2 hands. I know that I saw a logo on one of the tumblers. It was etched into the metal. You couldn't get rid of that just by washing it. I'm almost positive that if I had opened up the box at the rink and saw one tumbler with the etched logo and the other plain stainless steel tumbler, that I would have said something about it right there. Instead though, I have this strange memory that I treated the 2 tumblers as if they were both exactly the same. I was standing in my kitchen with one of these strange tumblers in my hand, trying to reassure myself that my memory was correct, but it just wasn't clicking. I had no other tumblers that were anywhere close to this one. It had the exact same shape and size. It was just that one had the etched logo and the other did not. I even thought that maybe I had imagined washing two tumblers. Maybe I had just looked at one and my mind filled in the blanks. Now I was just grasping at straws. The timing didn't help either. Since I had recently been infected with COVID, like I said, that meant that I automatically blamed myself. I came up with a much more outlandish theory after a while, though. I joked that the moment when I had seen the tumbler with no logo on it was when my timeline had split, and I had found myself in an alternate universe. Of course I was kidding, sort of. Mainly, I was aware of the fact that memory wasn't always real. I knew that COVID could mess with your mind if it wanted to. After this, whenever I felt something in my life just wasn't quite right, I would joke to myself that it was probably because I had somehow ended up in the wrong universe after the incident with the tumbler. It was a silly thing to say, but in some ways, it helped me to feel better. I don't really think that that was what had happened to me, though. It isn't like I believe in these conspiracy theories about timelines and alternate universes, but maybe I should.
Story by Always an Explanatio. The Storm Sweepers.
When I was younger, I used to go on really long runs in the rain. I know that, in retrospect, seems like a strange habit, and one that not many would be comfortable doing, as they see a stormy sky full of dark clouds and think to themselves, "Oh great, not another rain-filled day where I'm stuck inside." I was the opposite. I enjoyed doing my runs when there was severe weather, because I felt like I could experience my own world away from everybody else. The more intense the weather got, the more I felt like that, an outward expression of my energy. Thus, I would go running outside despite a potential storm. Doing a run in such conditions means that you start to notice things that, during a calm and serene day, you wouldn't have been aware of at all. As other people were staying inside behind their closed windows, waiting for the weather to clear up, I would be out there for an hour or so and spot the little things being done in the background. Sometimes, on these occasions, I would stumble across something so bizarre that it would cause me to stop in my tracks and do a double take at the sight before me. Not necessarily stop running every time, but something strange enough that I couldn't ignore it. When I would get outside during a downpour, I would see people doing things I never would have imagined seeing in heavy rainfall. The most common occurrence I saw was when people would be out trying to sweep the patio area of water. Not after the rain had stopped, or even as it began to let up, but during the storm itself. No kidding. The only time I ever saw this before was in the military, sweeping during rainfall. Yes, it's a real thing there. Another thing I would sometimes spot was people washing their cars outside while it was raining. Not a light drizzle either, I have to specify, but when the rain was coming down in sheets and you could barely stand up straight without getting drenched or see in front of you. It was simply amazing to me that people would continue with their chores and routines as if the weather conditions weren't even a factor. They were getting drenched themselves, no umbrella, and a few of them didn't even have ponchos on. This did happen often enough to where I began to pick up on a pattern that had formed, not a one-off. It had become a running gag of sorts in my head that I thought was hilarious. Okay, 90% hilarious, 10% crazy. I wondered if I was witnessing some sort of NPC behavior, where there were real-life equivalent to video game NPCs that had a certain set of behaviors they followed that didn't take into account the weather. I play plenty of Skyrim. I of course don't really believe that those people were NPCs. It was more just the oddity of the situation being funny to me in a way, I think. I know about the simulation idea, but nah, we're not in the Matrix. Being a guy who voluntarily went out during severe weather and saw other people who were completely oblivious to my existence doing the exact same thing made the entire scenario a bit ironic for me. That was what made it so memorable, the contrast between my presence and theirs during such conditions. Both unexpected, but my actions weren't completely undermined by circumstances unlike theirs.
I used to ride my bike in storms all the time. Didn't just walk or run. I don't really like doing that either, even now. I just prefer biking. It's so fun. Biking is probably the best single exercise you can do. It's low impact, burns a ton of calories, and the perceived effort is so low for how many calories you burn. And it's just good for your aerobic, your heart, your cardiovascular system. You move fast, so it feels kinetic, and you don't get bored. You can go far and still enjoy it because the view changes. The only caveat is you need to live in an area that has at least a wide shoulder on the roads. If you're very rural, something I find in most U.S. places, it feels pretty dangerous to occupy the road with drivers here. And, they all get mad at bikers and all that. It would be so cool if there was just bike paths everywhere. I would only bike if there were bike paths everywhere that weren't connected to the road. So it didn't bother anyone and it was safe. That'd be a dream. But anyways, back to the, biking in storms or running in storms. Same principle. It feels like alive. Yeah. Maybe not in a thunderstorm, but I don't know. Does lightning strike? Well, because you have rubber wheels, so the contact to the surface is minimal. There probably wouldn't be much risk, but I don't know. Shocked even on a bike. Anyways, again, back to it. Maybe it's dangerous. Be careful. But yeah, it feels really good. It feels powerful. Were people just sweeping rain? That is so crazy. I think I've seen a few scenes of that, in movies, where military members are told to go paint the sidewalk when it's raining, or, sweep the sidewalk when it's raining, or just nonsense like that. Busy work because you can't be idle, but there's nothing productive to do. So just go do random crap, dig a hole, fill it back in. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think there's any logical reason to sweep during the rain. Not that I can think of. If you really saw people doing that, are they NPCs? If every person, human being, has a soul, but they're real players in the real world, well, is there a buffer, a waiting period? As soon as someone is born, a soul is pushed into it from the next player waiting to jump in. How many people? Maybe there's 10 quadrillion people in the real world waiting in line, so there's never any shortage. Does that make sense? But maybe there's not. Maybe there's a limited amount of people that are trying to play, and in that case, you would need temporary vessels on autopilot that don't have a player yet, just so the world functions in the simulation. We can't just, you're giving birth and there's a buffer period, the woman is in labor and she has to wait because there's no one available to load into the baby yet. She's just stuck in labor. Oh, maybe that's why labor takes so long for some girls. I don't think that's the case, but that's a thought. They're temporarily empty until a player joins into them. How this translates, into older people, adults, I don't know. Human being be born, go through their entire life, and never receive a real player from the real world. That's an idea. I don't know if I like that, but I guess I have to think about that. Story by LG Huza Official. 3 Tugs Before Dawn.
This happened when I was about 27 years old, and I still remember it as if it happened yesterday. It was a winter night, around 3 a.m. I was sleeping in my room when I felt that my mother had come in to wake me up. I was awake enough to understand what was happening, but I didn't want to get up. I kept pulling the blanket over my head and told her, "I don't want to wake up." She tried to pull the blanket away 3 times, and I resisted every time. While this was happening, I suddenly realized something very important. The door of my room was locked from the inside with a key. I always sleep with the door locked. It was impossible for my mother to enter my room. The moment I realized that, I decided to look at her. I lifted the blanket. The body and the clothes looked exactly like my mother, but the face was not hers. Her face was completely black, and her hair was white and messy. In real life, my mother has fair skin, and her hair looks nothing like that. The strange part is that she never tried to hurt me. She didn't say anything scary. She only kept trying to wake me up. I was afraid, but I stayed surprisingly calm. I pretended to be asleep again. pulled the blanket over my head, and eventually fell asleep. When I woke up in the morning, the first thing I did was check the door. It was still locked from the inside, exactly as I expected. No one could have entered my room that night. Nothing unusual happened that day either, and this experience never happened again. How the hell do you explain this? Was it an extremely realistic dream? A sleep-related experience? Or something else? My favorite story has to be the storm sweeper. I think it's unsettling in its own way, kind of a casual unsettling, but just because I used to navigate that kind of environment in storms and all, it's personal appeal, personal bias, you could say. And it just has a cool vibe, yeah. All right, time for the jokes. My kid texted me, "I just spilled bleach and baking soda all over the floor. What do I do?" I wrote back, "Throw a blanket over it." A minute later, he replied, "Okay, now what?" I said, "Nothing. All our bases are covered." After I commented on how big my son is getting, he replied, "Maybe it's because you've been taking me to the grocery store." Beautiful. He's only 8. He has a bright future. NASA sent a satellite into space to apologize to the aliens. They named it Apollo G. Oh no. Gotcha, Dave. Stupid hair in my eyeball. They're literally just floating hairs everywhere. It's crazy. Why did the baby habanero put on a jacket? It was a little chilly. Why do people in Athens hate mornings? Because dawn is tough on Greece. Oh my goodness. Oh, my eyes watering. But yes, dawn is very tough on Greece. I guess it's tough everywhere, but it's just because the evil sun is there. Okay, more glitches up here. Check them out. See you next time.